point which you found was relevant for you, that I also understand how to take this forward in this direction.
Yeah, Bhagavad is a special book where a leader is preaching to a leader.
Yeah.
It's not leader to some follower. Arjuna was also a leader.
Yes.
That will give us an idea how to deal with people who are materially very much talented.
So their leaders, when they're spiritually not so savvy or advanced, but their material qualities also need to be recognized. Thank you.
I
Yes.
thought for you that to reduce a person to just his ideological or philosophical belief is also a form of impersonalism. I like the point. And also the fact that it keeps ringing in my ears almost that moderates of other faiths are more better than fanatics in ours and extremists in ours.
Yeah, true. See, this philosophical impersonalism, and you put it as like psychological impersonalism. So the second part is psychological. Right? It's more like we, at the level of our mind, we just perceive things. We reduce people to their opinions or something like that. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, philosophically we may be different, but culturally we are same. That's what you stressed upon. That was a wonderful.
Yes, I want to make one point about it. Thank you for bringing it up. See, Radha, sorry, Ramakrishna Maharaj, in his PhD, he did a PhD on Prabhupada's teachings. It was not completed before he left. But there he raises many difficult questions. Not that he's always able to come up with sound answers. But one of the questions he raises is, if we consider Srila Prabhupada, at one level, if you see Srila Prabhupada's criticism, we consider the Gaudiya Math is fairly close to us. Then we could say the Ramakrishna mission it's within the same Hindu tradition. Hmm? Then Gaudiya Math is in the same Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. But it seems that Srila Prabhupada's, if we consider Christianity is slightly outside the tradition, we could say Islam is further away from the tradition. But it seems that Srila Prabhupada's criticism of Gaudiya Vaishnavism is Gaudiya Math is quite strong. His criticism of the Ramakrishna mission is quite strong. But there is hardly any Christianity, there is hardly any criticism of Islam. Even when Prabhupada talks about, in our own Chaitanya Charitamrita, is describing how the deities had to be rescued and saved and temples were vandalized. Prabhupada doesn't seem to be expressing any anger or any outrage. There's no criticism. So, why is it that those which are close to our tradition are being criticized, and those which are actually historically, they have damaged our tradition quite a bit? They are not criticized by Srila Prabhupada. So, the answer he gives, now I'll raise this in the Bhagavad, is that Prabhupada, when Prabhupada was giving timeless teachings, Prabhupada was also speaking to a particular audience. So now if we consider Prabhupada's audience at that time, for Prabhupada's audience, Islam was not a competitor at all. Christianity was also not a competitor. Because they were not, if they had been to order that, they would never have come to ISKCON. They would just want in there. So for them, these were much bigger competitors. Same, almost as I said, anyone who would explore Indian philosophy, they would have some, the best, they would have some idea of Eastern philosophy. Their idea was important personalism. So what he says, the strength of Prabhupada's criticism, it was not based on how wrong or damaging a philosophy or a group was, but how wrong or damaging it was for his followers. So for his followers, like the example, he doesn't give the example, but say that if a child is living in a particular neighborhood, and there's a bully in that neighborhood, now there might be child abusers and murderers and kidnappers who will be living far away from the city. But the mother will warn the child much more about that bully than about kidnappers and terrorists and child murderers. Why? Because those are not an immediate danger for the child. The mother is not going to leave the child alone so that she is going to be abducted by someone. But if the bully is right in the neighborhood, then the mother is much more likely to warn the child, you don't go near that area. Don't stay away from it. So if it's not a bully, it's like a child who's a drug addict and who's into drugs and might poison this child with drugs. So the idea is that this is not Prabhupada's criticism of Gaudiya Vaishnavism is very Gaudiya Math is quite close to us ideologically, culturally. Ramakrishna Mission also is that way. They have very different philosophy, but culturally there are so many similarities. But Prabhupada focused primarily on how wrong it was likely to lead his disciples. And that's why he spoke strongly. Now, does that mean that it is, but then again, demographics. I mentioned that with Prabhupada's life members, Prabhupada didn't speak too strongly about them to those people. Because with them, they were already committed to a particular path. And Prabhupada simply engaging them in Krishna's service. So that when to see cultural similarity, when to see philosophical similarity.
Right.
So in Prabhupada was preaching in the West, my understanding is in that Prabhupada didn't want to get caught in the Hindu-Muslim conflict or this religion, that religion conflict. And that's why Prabhupada was fairly mild, if at all, in his criticism of Islam. Because India was quite polarized, it is even now polarized. Now at least there's some activism happening from the Hindu side. But India was polarized, Prabhupada didn't want to get caught in that.
Yeah.
So Prabhupada didn't do that at all. He didn't get into that. So, but that does not necessarily mean that Prabhupada was not aware of the threats. Prabhupada was very much aware, and he told devotees when there are threats, you should get guns. If you get guns, then you should defend yourself with guns. So it's not that Prabhupada was unaware, but that is my broad understanding. Any comments or reflections are welcome about this? Yes. Anyone else would like to share some reflections from yesterday's talk? Anything that struck you?
You very articulately made this point that how much Krishna respects even Arjuna, who is his disciple. And you gave the concept of acceptance and not to appreciate and accept people, not to reject them for what they do not have, but to accept them for what they have.
Yes, that's such a nicely put. I didn't put it that way also. To accept people for what they have, not reject them for what they don't have. Nicely put. I'm going to steal that quote. Thank you.
It's my view.
You also mentioned that reducing a person to an ideology is like impersonalism.
Yeah,
So
true.
it's not like we have to push too much or go to extreme.
Yeah, people have cultural, patriotic, professional, so many sides they have. That is knowledge in the mode of ignorance, 1822. Yeah. Yes, true.
And for you, one of the very major part I just perceive like your statements are very concentrated, and with your concentrated statements, we make lectures out of it. I heard one sentence is analyze, realize, and relish. You mentioned in one of the lecture. So that I have made many lectures on this only, analyze, realize, and relish.
Oh, okay.
So yesterday, curiosity to conformity is a point. Sometimes you go so fanatic. And someone is coming and says, temple, they want to make them devotee just at once.
Yeah.
This model is very important. Very
Thank you. So, people have curiosity, but if you push them from curiosity to conformity too fast, then they get alienated. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I got a good point that we are missing one thing, that how outsiders are preaching to outsiders.
Yes.
We are thinking about insider and outsider. Outsiders are preaching to outsiders. We are missing this point.
Yes. That's why if you go to a website like Quora and other places, there is so much negativity. There are devotees who are also there, but there's a lot of criticism of ISKCON, criticism of Prabhupada. And it's not that these are anti-Hindu people who are doing that. There's people who have had negative experiences and they're sharing that over there. And somehow many of the devotees in Quora were there. They're trying to do a good job, but they are actually using insider-outsider communication or sometimes insider-insider communication to deal with outsiders. It doesn't work that way. Mm. So if somebody says Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita is fanatical, is only bhakti fanatical, that's a criticism, but that requires a fair response. And then one response I heard in Pura is, do you think that you are a greater scholar of the Bhagavad Gita than the person who has inspired millions of people to start studying the Bhagavad Gita? Well, that's a valid answer, but that's not a relevant answer over there. That's not a relevant answer for somebody. So people just say, yeah, that doesn't prove that the Bhagavad Gita is right. That just proves how cults can gather so many followers. So I think that's a very important point, outside relation. That means we ourselves sometimes have to learn the language of the outsiders so that we can communicate with them in a way that's acceptable for them. Yes.
There was one point yesterday. It's like if we go to a forum, then we should talk accordingly. This we have seen in our areas also. A few weeks back, there was MCD election, local election, and there were many people they wanted to approach us because it's like mohalla kind of election. So we took that opportunity, and marathon was also on the way. So we talked to them and we made our point, and they were very happy to sponsor some books. So we talked to them and we said that if you will sponsor, then the faith, especially the Hindu class people, they will show some trust towards you. So why don't you sponsor some? And then we'll put your name, about Bhagavad Gita, and then we'll distribute. So instead of giving any big lectures and all those things, we talked accordingly in their form, and they got convinced and they sponsored few Bhagavad Gita. So this point was very relevant.
Okay. Interesting. That's creative. Yeah. So it's like this.
So, how Srila Prabhupada dealt with this Allen Ginsberg and George Harrison. So it shows we should accommodate even those people, those who are not 100% committed to our society, but at least they are well wishers, and they can do outside communication in better way than us.
Yeah, that's a powerful. George Harrison was never really an insider in one sense, but he reached to so many people. Thank you. Yes, please.
I wasn't there yesterday. I missed the session for some engagement. But the point that you made just now about proximity, the target audience, whatever is more detrimental for them, that is to be attacked more.
Mm-hmm.
So while at the overall level, Srila Prabhupada.
No, I'm not saying that. That is what we should do. I don't know whether we should criticize the body or not. That is what Srila Prabhupada did. To understand what Srila Prabhupada did. Yeah.
So while at the absolute level, yes, Srila Prabhupada was less critical about his Christianity and Islam. At the same time, when he went first, so at that time he was very aggressive on Christianity. He actually did criticize Christianity because the audience was all Christians. So I don't know, it is.
Where was this exactly?
I mean, Srila Prabhupada was always saying that Christians, are you a real Christian? Christians
Do
be
not follow
hated.
do not follow 10 commandments, etc.
No, so it's true, of course. Actually, Prabhupada was not like, he was not compromising with philosophy. But the point is, Prabhupada didn't get caught in this fanaticism kind of. Especially more than Christianity, when devotees feel like, why is Prabhupada not? Many Hindus criticize Islam. But if you want to do something aggressively against Islam, not attack them, but just take some strong action, it's difficult to find Prabhupada's quote to support that idea. So that's because, in one sense, if we go a little bit in the history, see, for many of the Indian independence fighters, actually, there was some amount of spirituality within them. Their spiritual conceptions were different. Whether it is Aurobindo or whether it is Lokmanya Tilak or whether it is even before that, whether it is Subhash Chandra Bose, they all had some spiritual inclination. Subhash Chandra Bose not so much, but what happened at the time of partition? Two things happened. First, at the time of independence, partition happened, and partition was seen as caused by religion. Hinduism was not blamed primarily, but it was seen as religion is detrimental for India's national progress. And then after that, Gandhi was assassinated. And when he was assassinated, the blame was pinned on Hinduism primarily. Godse had apparently been a member of the RSS before. He was no longer a member, but it was that the RSS was actually banned for some time at that time. So because of these two reasons, the Indian government was able to justify, Nehru already had some bias against Hinduism, but he was able to justify completely sidelining Hinduism from India's national vision of development. And of course, minority politics, minority bank, and the Islam and the Muslim are pleased. But it is a very, very polarized situation. Prabhupada just steered clear of that. Okay. Yes.
Project analysis of how Srila Prabhupada instructed his Western followers and how he negotiated with or dealt respectfully with the Indian life members. That and especially the way he brought out that now we have to deal with our congregation devotees who are somewhere in between, not exactly like that, Western followers who can follow everything. Yet they can be very dedicated, follow principles. So we should very, very uh, accommodative, encouraging, and not just have one barometer, one yardstick to measure their progress, etc. Rather, they'll have feeling of guilt, etc.
Exactly.
That was very wonderful and very practical.
I think this is maybe I'll talk about it. Maybe the generation is older, my generation, our generation, we are all the same generation more or less. Our generation may be willing to practice bhakti to a certain level of guilt. Oh, I have to do this. But the younger generation, they are not ready for it. We guilt people into practicing bhakti. Prabhupada did so much for you. Can't you do this much? Oh, you did like this. I can't do that. So that kind of they have to the younger generation will not take it up. So the older might. So thank you for your yes.
I think one clarification, like our stance against Islamic. Nowadays I see in ISKCON many preachers are taking very strong stand against Islam.
Yeah.
Social media also they are propagating. So I don't know whether we are adhering to Prabhupada's principle or it's, I was really afraid that we are adhering to Prabhupada's.
See, with respect to Islam, it's yesterday I mentioned about Sattva. So if you consider if you want to responding to Islamic extremism, there are broadly the world is dealing with it two ways. If you consider pendulum, one is it has nothing to do with Islam. So one of the earlier presidents of America, Barack Obama, he was refusing to even call it as Islamic extremism. Just call it extremism in the Middle East. He was criticized for that. And that is one thing. This is extreme political correctness. And this is what the mainstream media is saying. There was a big article in the Guardian. What had happened was many Europeans, not born in Islamic families, had joined the ISIS. Men, women, especially men, but many women also. And that was a great cause of concern even in Europe. So the Guardian had an article saying that actually it is not that Islam made these people extremists. These people were already extremists by their very nature. And Islam became the justification for being acting in extremism. This is like bending backward to try to whitewash Islam. That's one thing. But the other extreme is to say that Islam itself is entirely extremist. Is all extremist. Now this actually is not true. Right now in the world, 1 out of every 4 people is a Muslim. If every one of them were extremists, then the world would be a far more insane place than what it is right now. So because this has been in the mainstream media, so what has happened is I'm not saying this right. So because this has been the mainstream media, so the extremists to go to the other side, and this is a reaction. I feel that as a reaction, this is damaging. So Prabhupada would not have approved of this. That's my understanding because Prabhupada, there is an incident with Prabhupada was in the Middle East, Iran, I think, and they heard the namaz prayers being recited, Shahada prayers. And one day Prabhupada closed his eyes and Prabhupada was hearing the recitation. And he opened his eyes were bright. Wasn't that wonderful, Prabhupada said. And then the devotee asked, Prabhupada, wouldn't it be better if they're chanting Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada looked annoyed. He said, why are you making me sectarian? We are worshipping God in our way, and they're worshipping God in their way. So, man says Prabhupada was appreciative if God was being worshipped. And at least in some ways, Muslims are strict in their ways of worshipping God. But they are also intolerant. So, what my understanding is the balanced approach would be recognize that Islamic extremism, it has many causes, and Islam is one of the causes. So to say that Islam itself is the cause of Islamic extremism, that is extremism on our side, because not all Muslims are extremists. But to say it has nothing to do with Islam, that is also wrong, because those people themselves are quoting the Quran. Now, we could say that no, those people would have been extremists even if there was no Quran. Well, that's possible. But right now, this is the justification, and we can't deny that. So, yes, many devotees are going in that other direction where they're just being very. Uh, um, it's like we are responding to intolerance by intolerance. Hmm? Now we want to respond to intolerance by firmness, by strength, but not by intolerance. That is not going to work. So just to, since this point has come up, see, my understanding of what Srila Prabhupada is teaching, there's also that many of you have seen that quote of Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he says, if I go to a place of worship of another religion, and I see God being worshipped in a way that is different from my mind, from mine, and I can't comprehend it fully. But still, I will stand there in a mood of reverence, appreciating the glory of God who is manifesting himself in this way. So basically, we could say it's like a mountain. Our understanding, the way Bhaktivinoda Thakur Prabhupada said is, there are many ways to climb up the mountain. So the top of the mountain is love of God. That we can call as spiritual consciousness. The bottom of the mountain is material consciousness. So there are different ways to go up. Now, are all the paths equal? Well, maybe not. Some paths might be more slippery, some paths might be more rocky, some paths might be more smooth. So we have full right to propagate that our path is the easiest path to the top. Because of Mahaprabhu's mercy, because of the Kirtan, because of so many factors. We can say that. But that does not mean it is the only path. And now, unfortunately, some people they just keep going round and round at the bottom. And what they do is, anybody who's going up by another path, they keep pulling them down. They are not going up by their path, but they are pulling others down. So that is unhealthy. But so in general, going back to Prabhupada Krishna Christianity, what I talk with devotees also who have studied Christianity by the way. Prabhupada's approach was twofold. If somebody was a nominal Christian and just born in a Christian family, then he would inspire them, say if this is the Gaudiya Vaishnava path. If somebody is born in a Christian family, he would encourage them to come up to practice Krishna consciousness. But if somebody was already a dedicated Christian, Prabhupada would not tell them to give up Christianity and take up Gaudiya Vaishnavism, take up Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada would tell them that practice Christianity better. For example, he says, thou shalt not kill. Apply it as avoid meat eating. So that's the idea. That's the idea that if somebody is going up by this path like this, then we appreciate. But if somebody is going around like this and trying to pull us down, then we have to counter it. So within Islamic tradition, there are people who are, I guess, studying the interfaith you mentioned about how you also had experiences of so they are being they're very broad-minded. So we have that. So I think that extreme, that idea of going to the other extreme, that is dangerous. But then this is also reaction. If more and more people are just propagating this other idea that Islam has nothing to do with Islamic history, then it also is a problem. Does it make sense? Thank you. So,
one thing I thought, Toyi, for my personally, I felt very nourished with this point. It was a very personal thing for me when you mentioned that be mindful of perceptions, but not have a mind full of other perceptions.
yeah.
So I found that very useful.
Yeah, again, you could have to I don't care for people's perceptions, or I care only for that. That's also a problem. Thank you. So, thank you. You have summarized almost all the points. More than that, you have read your point. I'll quickly talk about the structure that I took yesterday, and then move on to the next point. So, yesterday, is talking mainly about the point of acceptance. How a leader needs to be accepting towards others. And in that, I started by talking about the first point was that not instruction but negotiation. That's what we may need if we're going to accept people. And negotiation is Prabhupada engaged life members. And then this is not just for instruction negotiation, then we talked about the outsider communication. That especially this kind of negotiation is required because there are many people who may be outsiders and they may not want to become insiders. But still, they may become more favorable outsiders. They may become unpaid advertisers first, unpaid promoters first. So especially for them, if you're going to interact with them, then this mode of negotiation is very important. And then for this to happen, we avoid this psychological impersonalism, where we reduce people to just one attribute in who they are. We try to avoid that. That we recognize culturally there's similarity, we work at a cultural level. Nationally there's similarity, at a national level we can work, religious level we can work. And then after that, we were discussing this point, but we didn't complete that point. I was discussing more about when we work with different people, it is we focus on engaging them from where they are. So, so this acceptance, what does it mean in practical terms? That's going to be the theme of today's session. Acceptance means that after there's a facilitation, rather than as contrasted with say, or not conversion. Now, conversion has a negative connotation. Conversion means I would say here is outsider to become an insider. So if we are really accepting people, then we facilitate them. And we see this in Krishna's mood in the Gita also. If you see the way the Gita progresses, I gave the brief trend, chapter 1 and chapter 18. So what happens is Krishna starts from Karma Yoga, he goes to Bhakti Yoga. That's by the end of chapter 6. Or the end of chapter 7. So 6.47 is Yoginam Sarvesham. 5.29 is Bhaktaram Tapasam. So basically, Krishna is going from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. And then after that, from chapter 7 till the end of chapter 12, that is 13, he is basically talking about Bhakti Yoga. And then after that, from chapter 13 to chapter 18, is basically Jnana Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. That's why Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma we have. That is the perfection of Jnana Yoga, but then from there it is Bad Bhaktim Labhate Param. So in the middle section, Krishna is glorifying Bhakti Yoga. But toward the end of the 12th chapter, Krishna offers Bhakti Yoga at a multi level. So if I expand this. So again, this point, the way I phrase it is that, you see, Krishna doesn't reject any yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. He doesn't reject Karma Yoga, he doesn't reject Jnana Yoga, he doesn't reject Dhyana Yoga. He recommends Bhakti Yoga, but he doesn't reject any of the yogas directly. So Krishna's mood that way is very inclusive. 4.11 is Mama Vartamana Vartante Manushya Parthasarthi. So all people are on my path. So the way I put it is from your place at your pace. Access Krishna's grace. So this is overall Krishna's mood. Okay, this is where you are. This is the space that you want to move forward. From there you can access Krishna's grace. So in one sense, Krishna is talking about other yogas. Okay, if you're not ready for Bhakti Yoga, you can practice that also. Not ready to worship me, you can worship Devatas also. Of course, if you want to know what I would want you to do, then I'm very clear. So from your place, at your pace, access Krishna's grace. So Krishna in the Gita is inclusive, but not inconclusive. Inclusive, as like a doctor tells you got diabetes, then you just give up eating sugar. It's very conclusive. But if you are not ready to do that, okay, then you take sugar. You can take this, you can take these as items, you don't take these items. You take it this many times, you don't take it that many times. So like that, Now Krishna is clear. Sarvadharman Pratyajya is as clear as it can get. But that does not mean Krishna is condemning others, other paths. The same way with respect to Bhakti Yoga also, if you consider, actually it doesn't go this way, it goes this way. That 12.8, 12.9, 12.10, 12.11. It goes on to 12.12 also. Here Krishna is offering access to bhakti at multiple levels. So 12.8 is absorption in me. So absorption is basically, generally when we say I'm absorbed, that means there's no effort required. Naturally attracted. Mayeva mana, that's so my buddhi. If that is not possible, and not chittam samadhat, then he says, practice to focus on Krishna. So abhyas. So this is internally we're directly connected with Krishna. If you're not internally connected, try to connect with Krishna. If that is also not possible, then he says, then mat karma paramo bhava. Then work for Krishna. And then if he says you can't do that, then work for some good cause. Work for a higher cause. Higher cause means higher than just your personal pleasure, your sense gratification. So he says, in this way, you will also get elevated. So Krishna is actually offering a very broad approach to outreach. So we could say most of ISKCON is at this level. From yesterday's perspective, Prabhupada for his followers, like disciples, it was he encouraged them to rise from here to here. Practice strict sadhana, focus the mind on Krishna, and aim to become pure devotees. So, you could put it this way: that this was for full-time devotees or Prabhupada disciples, and this was for the life members. Now, work for Krishna doesn't mean actually work for Krishna can also have two levels. You do seva for Krishna, and you work and you give your Lakshmi to Krishna. That's also a form of seva. So most of ISKCON, we are at the second and third level. However, we idealize the first level and we all aim for the first level. Prabhupada accommodated third level, but the fourth level we don't accommodate much. So there can be multiple definitions of progress and success on the spiritual path. If somebody is just from living self just for one's own sense pleasure, if somebody is coming to the fourth level, somebody is working for a higher cause, then that is good. That is good. Like one of the criticisms of our food relief program is that people will not give money to the temple and they will give money for the food relief. Well, that's possible, but it's also possible that the people who give money to food relief will never give money to temple because they're not interested in that. So if they are giving money for food relief, this is not just food relief. This is in a devotional context. Prasad is being offered. So we don't want, if you consider this, we don't want people from here to go here. But there are people from here who can come here, and that we want. People who are just living for their own senses. They are giving something for a higher cause. And they are giving something for a cause connected with Krishna. So we need to facilitate people's growth from multiple levels. And this approach has its problems, and I'll talk about that. But first, the scriptural basis says that in Krishna himself in the Gita says that there can be multiple levels at which you can connect with him. And he accepts that. He not only accepts, he appreciates that. So there are, I can put it in a slightly different way. There are two terms. If we consider, say, this is our consciousness. Now, there can be from here, there can be the elevation of consciousness. So, elevation means that a person starts thinking about Krishna, about spiritual, eternal things. And this is the journey we want people to do, the elevation of consciousness. However, in the consciousness growth, there could be also the growth like this. This is more like the expansion of consciousness. But what I mean by this is that a person who is only thinking of myself and my senses, that person starts thinking of the country, that starts thinking of their community, that person starts thinking about something higher, then something bigger than themselves. They may have no spiritual conception in that. But isn't that better than just thinking of oneself? Say when there's a pandemic and people are dying in thousands. If there's somebody who's only thinking about how I can make money and maybe I just buy a lot of sanitizers and a lot of masks and then sell them at a profit. And somebody who thinks that, okay, I have some money, let me use it for giving free sanitizers, free masks. Well, certainly expansion of consciousness is better. Now the ideal is what? From here, we move both like this. That means I call it as evolution of consciousness. It is elevation plus expansion. So, elevation plus expansion. So, now just to go back to this point, in one sense, 12.8 to 10 is talking about elevation of consciousness. That, okay, absorb yourself Krishna, if not, then try to focus on Krishna, otherwise try to work for Krishna. But if expansion of consciousness, if elevation of consciousness is not possible, then 12.11 is actually talking about expansion of consciousness. At least expand your consciousness. Think of something beyond yourself. So now the best is if our consciousness both elevates and expands. That means we care for others and we care for others while also being spiritually conscious. So then there's actually authentic compassion. See, if there is only elevation of consciousness without any expansion of consciousness, then often that can lead to sectarianism. If I think I'm thinking about God, and my God is so great, and I want to worship God, I want to love God. So if there is only, okay, let's put it this way now, in terms of if I put 4 quadrants over here. Here there is expansion. Here there is elevation. Now, if there is no expansion and no elevation, then that is extremely selfish. And that will lead to disaster. If all of society starts becoming selfish, then it's going to be a big problem in society. So, even at one level, just a person getting married and taking care of a family, that is also an expansion of consciousness. Because when a person gets married, they have to think about their spouse, they have to think about their children, and that is also one level of expansion. Otherwise, the person is just in America. There's an increasing trend where parents are charging rent from their children for staying in their homes. Now, when Mandir is forwarded, that you see how parents are also being selfish. But that's not the reality. What is happening over there is that these kids, they just don't want to take up any job. They spend their whole day playing video games and watching porn. And many parts of America, welfare state, so the government gives them some money, their parents' inheritance is there. So their parents wanting to charge rent for their children is a way to get the children to become responsible. Get a job, do something with it. So the idea is that even becoming a grahastha, sometimes we think grahastha is restricted consciousness. Getting married is constant. But actually for many people, getting married and taking care of children and family, that can also be an expansion of consciousness. And for many people, the consciousness is so shrunk that they don't even want to do that. I don't want to do that. Nowadays in the West, there's this trend. In the past, if a couple doesn't have children, then it's considered an unfortunate thing. They may want to adopt or they somehow get a children, they like these things. But they don't say that we are childless. We are a childless couple. We say we are a child-free couple. Terrible thing, like a child children. It's not bondage. It's a responsibility, but it's fulfilling in its own way. So actually, when society is very shrunk in consciousness, even materially it cannot function. So this can lead to disaster if there's only neither elevation nor expansion. Now, if there is expansion without elevation, then what will happen is there will be only mundane welfare. So at least welfare will be there, but it will be mundane welfare. There will be no spirituality in that. And if there's no elevation of consciousness, sometimes it can be damaging also. See, when Prabhupada criticized sometimes the welfare work, his criticism was not specifically of welfare work. It was welfare work which was seen as not only an alternative but a superior alternative to devotional service. So this is actually, Alex, this is the important point. Let me explain this. See, for example, Prabhupada would criticize things like Manav Seva, Madhav Seva. It is, as far as I see, he is not quoted that specifically. But the point is, what was Prabhupada criticizing?
Mandir.
He was criticizing the comparison of devotional service with social service. So, if you consider from in a journey of consciousness, social service is a good thing. Then if a person doing social service, you can say that person is sattva. And if somebody is in devotional service, that person is in Shuddha Sattva. That's even better. So, double take. So, Prabhupada was not criticizing social service per se. There are times in many places where Prabhupada talks about charity being good and other things. But the problem was, again, Prabhupada was responding to a particular historical context. And the historical context was that when the Christians came to India, and they started trying to spread in the 17th, 18th century onwards, initially they tried outright criticizing Indian religion. But that didn't work very much. Some people got converted, but not many. Then Christians started going primarily into welfare work. Schools and food relief and poverty alleviation, medicine, hospitals and all that. And because of that, what started happening is, just because they were offering material relief. So, if you consider these are Hindus and these are Christians. Christians is a very small number. But the Christians started offering material relief. And they started, what happened, especially the lower class in the world, financially underdeprived, they started going towards Christians. So now, on seeing this, there are some Hindu organizations, and with all due respects, Swami Vivekananda and Ramakrishna Mission was prominent among that. They wanted to prevent this conversion from happening. And they said that, why can't Hindus take care of Hindus? Why are we caught in so much our own ideas that we don't want to take care of Hindus? And now Hindus, it's not that Hindus were poor. We had money and they were using it for temples, lavish temple worship. So what Swami Vivekananda's followers said is that actually seeing God in the eyes of a starving person is superior to seeing God in a stone. And he started saying that there are many quotes provocative, like watering a brinjal tree is better than watering tulsis. You'll get some food to eat. These are very provocative statements. But what was his point? His point was that Hindus should also be doing social service. Now that is fine as far as it's concerned. Now many temples, so Hindus should do more social service, that means help other Hindus, that is fine enough. But what he tried to do is, he saw that Hindus are doing devotional service. And a lot of money is going in that. So he wanted that all this should go over here. And that's why in many of his statements, he started putting devotional service and social service. He started comparing them and he started saying this is better. And it's not just better as social service, this is actually a more evolved spiritual vision. This is what the problem is. The problem is not if somebody wants to do social service, that's fine. Somebody wants to do devotional service, that's fine. But when it is actively propagated in society, that somebody who is doing social service is actually more spiritually evolved than a person who is doing devotional service. Why? Because a person who is devotional service, you can see God only in the temple. Whereas a person who is doing social service, I can see God everywhere. I can see God in the poor people. So this philosophical propaganda This was toxic. See, if you see many traditional temples, they offer free food to anyone who Udupi does that, Tirupati does that. And there are many religious food relief efforts also. But when this idea became that devotional service is actually an inferior form of spirituality as compared to social service, that was toxic. And that was what both Bhaktisarati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada criticized. The criticism is not of social service, the criticism is of social service being presented as a superior alternative to devotional service. So now, I mean, this is being done. So if somebody can expand their consciousness, that's better than having shrunk consciousness. So going back over here, I was talking about these 4 quadrants. This expansion is mundane welfare. So mundane welfare is not bad, but mundane welfare becomes bad if it is seen as a competitor, superior alternative to devotional welfare. Now, if there is only elevation of consciousness without the expansion, this can lead to narrow-mindedness, sectarianism, fanaticism. So our way is the only way. Our way is the best way. And our way is the only way. Anybody not following this way? And if you see the Abrahamic religions, it's the extremist form they have. If you are not worshipping Jesus, if you are not having faith in Muhammad, you are going to go to hell. And not only are you going to go to hell, we will help you get there faster. We will help you get there faster. So now it's easy to make jokes about this when we see it in other religions. But unfortunately, that can happen in our tradition also, in our movement also. If somebody has expanded consciousness, if somebody has elevated, they're trying to elevate their consciousness but without expanding it, and they can become very narrow-minded. So there's one prominent picture. He was talking with the devotees in Mumbai, Juhu. He had come early in 1885, 86, one of the most prominent life members in the Jew temple. They took this sannyasi to that place for a program. And their family has been worshipping the goddess for generations. And as soon as he went to their house, the first thing he saw the altar, goddess on the altar. He said, demigod worship? That's simply take it out. Now they were so offended by that. Afterward, they never came to the temple, they never responded to phone calls, they didn't give any funds, just became disconnected. Now, do we want people to rise from the worship of the Devatas to worship of Krishna? Yes. But we need to do it in such a way that people rise upward, not that they become anti-Krishna. So when you talk about this, I'll conclude with one point and then we can have some reflections over here and questions also. See, when we offer multiple levels at which bhakti can be practiced. So right now let's put this 4 over here. Krishna offers multiple levels, that is, we discussed 12.8, 9, 10 and 11. So when Krishna is offering these multiple levels at which bhakti can be practiced, there is a problem with offering multiple levels. And the key problem is that the purpose of offering this is, if somebody cannot just come over here, then they can at least come here. Or they can come here, whichever level they can come to. That is the purpose. Now the danger in offering multiple levels is, somebody is here, may come down over here. So this is the best, this is also good, this is better, but this is what we don't want. That somebody who can be at a higher level, that person comes down to a lower level. Like a parent has father has 2 children, one of them just gets 40% marks in the exam, barely passes out. So if you consider 2 children, one person gets 100% always, the other person gets just 40%. So now today both of them have come with exam results and both of them have got 70%. And the father will tell the person who has come from 40%. He say, bravo, well done, shabash. But the person who has come from 100% will say, badmash, what have you done? So what we are doing is, we are having just this reference point of 70 to 100%. And anybody who comes from 70%, badmash. But that person may be coming to 70% not from 100% but from 40%, isn't it? And that person may not be capable of 100%. So accept them at 70%. So what may not, so that's why what is good and bad, that depends on where a person is coming from. So for a person to do philanthropic work is bad if they can be doing devotional service. But that if that person is just doing self gratification, and for that person to do devotional service is actually good. So for somebody to worship the devatas, if they give up the worship of Krishna and worship the devatas, that is bad. But if they were being materialistic and atheistic and they are worshipping devatas, at least, that is good. So we could say over here that social work, sense gratification, and devotional service. So devotional service is 100%. We want people to rise up, not go down. So these multiple definitions of success or multiple levels of connecting people. This is important for us, and at each of these levels, there could be different definitions of success. That means certain programs may be primarily for getting people from, say, getting people at the level 1. Like, say, if you're doing food relief, the primary purpose, many purposes, one purpose could be just to get people to start appreciating us that we're also doing good work. But if you're doing some form of devotional service, if we are, say, so we could have this, concluding this now. See, if we consider, getting people here is also one definition of success. Getting people here is also another definition of success. Getting people here and here, they are all definitions of success. So sometimes some people may not be ready to rise to a higher level, or some programs may be meant for a particular level of success itself. Like when Srila Prabhupada started the Bhaktivedanta Institute, he says very clear, the purpose of the BI is to increase the prestige of ISKCON.
Oh, you said that as
Yeah. BI's purpose is not to make devotees. If they become devotees, that's an additional benefit. It is to increase the prestige of ISKCON. Now, what does prestige mean in this context? It means the outsider communication is improved. Hey, you went to ISKCON temple, or I went to this temple, they are called scientists also, they're smart people. So the outsider communication is improved. So for different forums, different forms of outreach, there may be different definitions of success. And evaluating every program by one definition of success is going to be damaging. So I'll talk more about this at this point. Any comments, questions, reflections? So I spoke 3 main things. I talked about 5. How Krishna is offering multiple levels of connecting from your place at your place, access Krishna's place. Then I talked about this concept of expansion and elevation of consciousness. And then last point I talked about is that that multiple definitions, multiple levels of connecting. The problem could be that people from higher level may go down to lower. But that doesn't mean that we don't provide the lower, because people who are still lower can come to that level. So we make a different definition of success for different programs. Yes, please.
Just a comment, like Vyasdeva distributed our one Veda into 3 or 4 Vedas, just because he saw that everybody will be having a different mentality towards it. And there is 3 gunas also, tamoguna and rajoguna and sattoguna. There will be always audience who will get these modes affected people. So that's why God has created different paths and different religion and different representatives also, so that they can easily, according to their mindset, can accept something and grow.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for saying that. Now, even in the Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken. The criticism of the Srimad Bhagavatam is not the criticism by Narmani of Vyasadeva is not that he composed all those literature. It was more that he did not clearly state what is the highest. But the criticism was not of the inclusive aspect. The criticism was that it was not conclusive. So the Bhagavatam itself is inclusive in some ways. Akama, sarvakama, va moksha kama. So if the dharma projayita kaitavata, that's the only purpose of the Bhagavatam. then why the Bhagavatam would say this? The Bhagavatam doesn't reject inclusiveness. What it rejects is that, or what it criticizes is that you're not conclusive. For those who want the highest, if they're not told the highest at all, that is a problem. If somebody is really a spiritual seeker, they want to know the nature of ultimate reality. And they come to ISKCON and all they hear is, oh, we distribute food and come and join us in distributing. If they want something higher and they're not given that, that will be a problem. Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Like if you are combining, we say evolution is expansion plus elevation.
Yes.
But sometimes in the name of sometimes for expansion cause we may compromise on elevation.
Yes, sometimes for the expansion we may compromise on elevation. Some of the word compression, the word compromise has a very strong negative connotation. And it could be, but my understanding would be that, okay, start with clarity. This forum is for this purpose. And with this forum, this is what we want to reach. Like in the scientific papers published by BI, they are not going to talk about developing of body. They're not going to talk about rasa and other things so much. Their purpose is just to ensure that people see that there is a rational basis for the existence of God. There is a rational basis for the existence of soul. So, some aspects of elevating consciousness may be not emphasized, rather than compromised. I might use the word maybe de-emphasized in particular forms of outreach. But what should not happen is that there is no avenue where that is emphasized. If that becomes our sole outreach, then it is going to become a problem. Hope it is clear. Like okay, I'll come to this point later.
We just trying to understand in a very simple way. So when we compare it with the elevation, the expansion, do we simply look at it this way that when you're looking at elevation and consciousness, it means increasing the depth or the intensity, and when you're saying expanding the consciousness, it just means the breadth of the devotion that you have, which will lead to.
Yes, I would say that's very good way of putting it. Let me put it another way. See, there is depth and breadth are two separate things. It's a expansion of consciousness means that okay, I'm aware. Okay, like some devotees, I and Krishna, and like we could say, what is the word? Bhajananandis and Goshanandis. Bhajananandis have elevated consciousness, but they don't have much expanded consciousness. They don't care for the world. Are they not compassionate? Well, yeah, they may be, but I was talking with Purnachandra Maharaj. That he was telling me, he said, why do the Bhajananandis not preach? He says, because they are permanently disappointed with the world. Disappointed with the world. They feel that this world and that people are never going to take Krishna consciousness.
The garment is actually screen.
Okay. So the thing is that it's not always a bad thing because some people may just not have that nature. But if there is only elevation without expansion, on a positive side, it's I'm concerned about my bhakti, I'm not concerned about anything else. But on the negative side, everything else is just bad. Well, everything else is not equally bad. Everything else there's sattva-guna, there's rajoguna, there's tamo-guna, and there's a difference between all of it. So if there's elevation without expansion, then we may not appreciate that. Like in the past, some devotees would say that if somebody wants to become a brahmachari. In the West, there is Mahapap. There's so much sensuality, free access is there. That's difficult for people to become devotees, especially brahmacharis. But in India, this is Mahapap. In the West, it is Mahapap. That is the obstacle. In India, Mahapap is the obstacle. Because your parents will oppose you when you become brahmachari. Well, okay. But are the two the same thing? A person not wanting to take up serious spiritual life because they are attached to the senses, and a person not being able to become brahmachari because they want to take responsibility for their parents. The two are not the same thing. One is in rajoguna, tamoguna. The other is the sattva-guna. And so this is the problem when we start with only expansion, when there's only elevation without expansion, then everything apart from Krishna, it is equally minimized. But yes, they are from a spiritual perspective, they are all valueless. But from a material perspective, there are different ways of functioning that are of different value. And Krishna in the Gita does emphasize Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha Mevapi Sampashyam Kartumarasi. Twice he talks about it. Loka Sangraha means maintenance of the world. And everybody has to act responsibly for maintaining the world. So we may say that Ma Baba are a distraction. But actually, especially as I'm spending more time in the West, and now it's going to happen in India also. Most kids in the West grow up in either broken families, or families with neglectful parents, or sometimes abusive parents also. And these kids have so many psychological issues that getting them to the platform of practicing bhakti, they have to spend so much time dealing with the psychological issues. So what the parents do for their children, even if the parents don't give them Krishna, even they give them they help them become basic, functional, decent human beings. That is a very valuable thing. And we may devalue it, it is only we devalue it till we realize when it is not there what happens. So parenting is a very important responsibility, not an easy responsibility also. So I hope that's the point I'm making is, if there is only elevation without expansion, then there is a problem that we may devalue everything, deride everything equal.
As you told, Srila Prabhupada never got into conflicts with these Muslims and Christians. Rather, he criticized more his own competitors. So my question is, Prabhuji, do we not feel compassion for others also, and we should also try to elevate their consciousness, or what should our approach towards these people? And another question is in the same line.
Others, you mean Islamic
Islam, yeah. And will they able to elevate themselves up to, like we go to a deathless place in Vaikuntha? So what will be their destination? If they keep following their path, will they also reach the same destination like us in Goloka or somewhere? So on that context, should we feel compassion for them?
Yeah, okay. So let's take the first question. Should we feel compassion for them? Yeah, of course. I mean, Prabhupada's, most of his audience were Christians and Jews. Mhm. So and Prabhupada was preaching to them. Like as you remember the diagram I talked about. If somebody is a nominal follower of that religion, Prabhupada said, yes, the purpose of life is to develop love of God. By following Jesus also, you can develop love of God. But by Mahaprabhu's mercy, it is much easier. It is much more relational. So practice this and you get elevated. So certainly we need to reach out to those people also. So as far as compassion and helping them, especially if they're nominal practitioners, then definitely we want to inspire them to take up. So when I said Prabhupada did not get involved, like Prabhupada, my point was this, that Prabhupada was not heavily critical of Islam. So that was because he didn't feel that relevant to the needs of his audience. Now, as far as where they will go, that is difficult to say. There is one session. There are different devotees who can quote different things from Prabhupada and Shastra to support that point. There is one TV show, I think, Les Crane's show, a very popular show at that time in 1960s. So Prabhupada was invited in that show, and there was a Christian father who was invited in that show. And at Les Crane's, the host asked Prabhupada, asked that Christian father, this Swami, he didn't even know, what is the book name? Bhagavad Gita, something like that. At that time, we were not familiar also. People who follow him and people who follow that book, will they go back to God? Will they go to God? He says, Krishna Father says, the path to God is very narrow and tough. And then he said to Swamiji, will people who follow the Bible go back to God? I said, yes. They will follow the word of God. They develop love for God. They will go back to God. So everybody applauded when Prabhupada spoke this. That was the broad mood. So now somebody would say this was just for PR. Well, I won't say Prabhupada would make such a statement for PR. Now exactly where will they go? will they go to Vaikuntha, will they go to Goloka? Regarding that, there could be different understandings. That it could be that if they follow Jesus, Jesus guides them, and maybe they have to go through another life where they learn about particular dimension spiritual world and they go to Krishna thereafter. Or maybe in the transition journey, and it's from this after they leave their body till the time they get to the spiritual world. In the transition, they are enlightened about these things. Like in our tradition also, when some of the Gaudiya Math devotees, they criticize that we don't really practice Ragatmika Bhakti. Raganuga and Ragatmika, some confusing words. But they say that if you don't consciously meditate on your Swarupa in the spiritual world, you don't have a guru who tells you a Swarupa, and then you don't meditate on Swarupa, how are you suddenly going to get your Swarupa and get Swarupa Siddhi and go to spiritual world? So in our tradition, I talked this with Nivas Prabhu and both of them, and others also, Shri Maharaj also from this. So they said our traditional understanding is that if we just practice bhakti faithfully throughout our life, even if we have not realized our Swarupa, even if our Guru has not told us our Swarupa, Krishna will see the lifelong devotion we have practiced. And during the journey from the end of this life to our next destination, Krishna will awaken whatever knowledge is there for us. So that could happen for them also. So overall, I think it's it's a very difficult, and I would also say subjective, subjective business to speculate what will be the destination of who. Because even if say Muslim, or a Christian, what are they following? With what degree are they following? What conceptions do they have? It will vary a lot.
It is very certain.
It's hard. So in general, we can say that if somebody devotes themselves to God, God will reciprocate with their devotion, and God will reward them. Now, exactly how that reward will come, that we don't know. We can't be sure. I can say. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing this question up. Very well, this point is understood that we cannot say how God will reciprocate with them. At the same time, based on the philosophical understanding, can it also be concluded that anyone who doesn't know Krishna, even theoretically, he can't reach Krishna immediately. So it's a gradual process. It's an evolutionary process. While we're talking of elevation of consciousness in this life, so obviously there's elevation of consciousness beyond this body also. So I mean,
Yeah, that's possible. But it's just like if Krishna can arrange it, so do all those ISKCON devotees who don't know their Swarupa by the end of their life, when they have to take another birth where they come to know their Swarupa and then only when their consciousness evolved, then they will attain Krishna. So if Krishna can reveal the Swarupa in the post-mortem journey, can Krishna not reveal himself in the spiritual post-mortem journey also? We don't know. I'm just saying that this seems to be a very self-congratulatory kind of view. Yeah, you practice your path, that's good. But in the next life, you have to born a Krishna Bhakta. And then you become Krishna Bhakta, then you'll go back to Krishna. Without coming to our path, you will not go back to Krishna. So I wouldn't be comfortable saying that unless, see, as I said, the reasoning which you are using, that's perfectly acceptable. But if you use that reasoning, then that reasoning can be applied to ISKCON devotees who don't know Swarupa also. You'll have to take another lifetime. Only then you will go to Krishna. So do we really want to use that reasoning? Or is it saying those who live in glass houses should not throw stones at others? Isn't it? So I would say that it's up to, I haven't found any categorical statement. There's one letter where Prabhupada seems to say that Jesus was a Siddha person. And he uses the Loka, and those who follow towards the Loka. From there he instructs about Krishna Bhakti, and from there he goes. Now, when devotee told me this letter, he said that send me that letter, but I haven't found that letter in Prabhupada's archives. So I don't know what may happen. Does that address your question overall? Yes. So we just have a couple of questions, then we'll have a 15-20 minutes break after that.
Regarding the elevation that you showed from the 12th chapter, if we take the 11th verse, work for higher cause, actually there is no Krishna consciousness.
Yes, correct.
And when we say that person is, expanding from self gratification for a higher cause, then the possibility he is stuck in the mundane welfare where he seems that mundane welfare seems more important to him than spirituality. Very difficult to make him move forward. most of the time we see in the society this kind of people.
Most of the times, well, some of the times, I would say that most people are not really
Like they want to give for, social cause,
Like Rotarians.
Rotarians, lands, and so many societies to do all the money and
Yeah.
welfare.
That's a challenge, Like, so Sattva can also be an attachment. Some sattvic activities people can get attached to, and they don't rise above from that. That's always a challenge. It just says Rajoguna can be a challenge, Tamoguna can be a challenge, Sattva can also be a challenge. It's true. Now, does that mean that if there are no social services in society that would be better? I wouldn't say that, because we don't have the reach to help everyone at the material level also. You do see that, if you see in the Bhagavatam, we have Rantidev and Shibi. The Rantidev is giving his own food, and there's no description over there when he's giving his food. He's making sure that the Chandala or the Chanti Hare Krishna first before taking this food. There's no description of that in the Bhagavad. Now, of course, you could take the Purva Paksha and say that he is a Kshatriya, and a Kshatriya's duty is also to take care of the material welfare of people. And he's simply doing his duty as a Kshatriya. It's true, but at the same time, it is glorified over there that he was so selfless, he was so compassionate. So there is a glorification in the Bhagavatam, which is the Amala Purana. There's a glorification of compassion without an explicit emphasis on spirituality. I'm not saying it is not spiritual. I'm just saying that that is not condemned. So although that kind of selflessness can become that kind of sattva so social welfare can become a competitor, and people may get stuck over there. But maybe some people will get stuck over there. That's the way it is. Some people get stuck in sattva, some people get stuck in sajoguna. Just like some people may just be completely consumed by taking care of their family, and they don't think of anything higher. That's, in one sense, it's bad, but it's better that people are at least concerned about taking care of their family than they are about their own self. There's one like anti-alcoholism ad in Russia, which was translated. He says that there's this person, and their family is watching TV, and the news says that the vodka prices have increased. And the father is an alcoholic. So the son asks the father a little fearfully, Dad, will you drink less now? And the father just looked at his son. No, you will eat less. So that was like a anti-alcohol awareness propaganda. They said, this is what alcoholism can make you, where you will deprive your family of food to satisfy your craving. So yes, Rajoguna is still better than Tamoguna. Now, do we want people to stay stuck at Rajoguna? No, we want them to rise higher. But do we have to demonize Rajoguna for that? No, Rajoguna is definitely better than Tamoguna. Am I addressing your point?
Which I think Srila Prabhupada in his purport to this 12.11 says this very nicely. Can I read this?
Yeah, please.
Srila Prabhupada, after mentioning that one can do such sacrifices, he says, thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. So gradually is the word Srila Prabhupada has used. He says further, it is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually. And in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on your experience. So, both the points, I think Srila Prabhupada is very nice.
Very well, beautiful purport. Just about getting stuck, I will speak one point about this. When somebody is doing social service, they could be doing it for broadly two purposes. It is actually to do good, or it is to feel good. Feel good means, I am a charitable person. I am doing so much philanthropy. I want my name to come over here. So now, if they are doing it primarily to feel good, they are likely to stay stuck. Because in general, in society's eyes, it is somebody who gives food to the poor, somebody who addresses us, gives free medical treatment, something like that. Person will be appreciated. But actually, if they want to do good, then sooner or later they will recognize the importance of change of consciousness, change of heart. They will recognize that just doing good to people is not good enough because the people don't change by that. If you just give charity to a beggar, well, that's better than letting the beggar starve. But if we are enabling the begging of the beggar by that, that's not a good thing. Maybe the beggar should be trained to make some kind of job. So even see, there are among people of social welfare workers also, there are some people who are a little more thoughtful. They actually want to do good and they will evaluate when I'm doing this, is this actually helping or not? If it's not helping, then what should we do? So then when they evaluate like that, then people learn. So the United Nations, one of my friends in America is devotee, he's working at the United Nations quite closely. So he said that the United Nations has now currently concluded that the most effective form of philanthropy of welfare work is feeding starving children more than adults, more than say famine relief, more than drought relief and climate change and all these things. Why? Because if children, they have so much potential, if they're well fed, they're well nourished, they grow up, they can do so much for the world in the future. So this person, this particular mark,
UN National?
United Nations.
United Nations.
So they say that the most cost-effective form of, now whether nations will actually take it and implement it, but the most cost-effective form of welfare work is feeding children. So there are people who think about that also seriously. They will definitely recognize the importance of being more effective. And when they recognize being more effective, then they will start thinking that maybe something that changes people for the better is important. And that's where they will become more important, more open to spirituality. You see the life story of Bhakti Maharaj, he was like that. He was very much into, say, the civil rights movement, the rights, the social activism, social welfare. But from there he realized that I have to, without a change of heart, is not sustainable. Thank you. The last, there's a better comment.
There's 12.10. It is such a beautiful shloka which has been taken up and during your lecture also. The Abhyasi Apya Asmartho Asihi Matkarma. So it shows so clearly in the purport, I mean, it makes it so relevant that unless there are various fields of activity, as I read the purport with your kind permission, there are various fields of activity, one should be interested in such activity. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activity, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. Now, in this field, like what we are working, like the food relief also, where we see that people will some percentage they try to give and for the welfare of the activities also. Slowly and slowly, their consciousness, as you have rightly said, it through powerful association of the devotees and taking them along and bringing them closer to Guru and Krishna also, they understand the underlying philosophy of Daridra Narayan and what they are being misfed about all these things also. They gradually elevate themselves and then they become an asset and then they start slowly getting into Krishna conscious also. The classic example is the ND Desai, when he and his son and his family, how they slowly and slowly came into it. Otherwise, how they were in Chinmay and Mission and ND Desai was so fanatic and also those things were there. But that caught them also. So what you have rightly said is that somehow the other, the association is a very powerful part which will going to help them also. And any activity which is there and is dovetailing with Lord Krishna's movement, it has to be encouraged in some way or other.
Wonderful point. I will speak on this point after the break, but it's a very important point. Yes, you want to say anything?
Same Guruji, I was before joining or coming to this ISKCON, I was also associated with social societies like RSS also. I spent 18 years of my life there. 18 years from my childhood, I was there. So I found that I was also very much into social work,
जान पे खेल के भी कुछ कर रहे हैं, kind of mentality was there. And हाँ, तो उसके बाद and after that, you know, as soon as we get touch of good devotees, and then our association makes us more advanced in spiritual life also. That's why Krishna didn't condemn such things or provide it, because it's a step. Then afterwards you have to come up, you have to advance.
Yes. Thank you very much. Related with this, or can you come back? This. Please, go ahead.
With this elevation and expansion, Surya, what you said that we have to strike a balance. So I think because all leaders are here, so this should go down the cadres, the people who are centers in charge and all. We have seen center in charge, they even don't allow their devotees going to other temple, same one temple. This message should go to down the cadre, is very important. So they become so elevation is there, but expansion is not there. So this I think.
It's like that with too much of a possessive mentality can transform, or not transform, you can deform, can actually deform like Vaishnava relationships into like the most self-righteous form of mutual fighting. The two people are always going to have differences, people are going to fight. But when people become completely convinced, I am right and you are wrong, that is when the fighting becomes most beautiful. If I understand that there's something right about me, something wrong about me, something right about you, something wrong about you, then at least there's some level of respect, there's some level of mutual discussion, resolution is possible. I was once at a conflict resolution kind of meeting, and there's two devotees came. The first devotee said to the other person that, I know you are angry with me. Second, I'm not angry with you. He says, anger is an expensive emotion, and I have concluded you are not worth it. Now, if somebody can start dehumanizing the other person to that extent, then there is no hope of resolution. So self-righteousness, this is where sociological surveys say that actually that sometimes the religious organizations, the fights are more than between secular organizations. Because the religious organizations, each group feels that I am right. And not only I am right, I alone am right. And the others are not just wrong, they're terrible. So that's why it happens. So expansion is important. Otherwise, we will be fighting among ourselves quite a bit. I'll come back to this point also. Like about we'll talk about this. If I don't, just remind me about it. So thank you very much.
Just continuation to this. Actually, we have sometimes fight goes more gross because of expectations also from devotees, because people don't feel particular the correct reciprocation from other people, those who are not devotee. But if some devotee is do something bad, so that create more impact.
Yeah, that is of course true. See, it's like frustration is a function of expectation. So the more I expect, then frustration is a function of expectation. So this one definitely Bhaktivinoda Thakur says humility means to have no expectation from anyone.
Not even from devotees.
Yeah, it's a very difficult definition of humility to practice. But yeah, it's true. These expectations can lead to frustration. So should we come back at 10:45? We'll finish by 12:15. Thank you very much. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
हवा पानी हवा पानी